So this is lecture number 15 for AP Biology, dealing with natural selection. And the question we're going to be dealing with is, how does the environment turn out to influence how organisms adapt? It's kind of a big deal in the world of biology, and in AP Biology they ask a lot of stuff about natural selection, and it's found in the book. So one of the things with natural selection that we know about is this thing is something that we've been doing for a while, and we do it through the form of what we call selective breeding or artificial selection. We take a trait and you only allow the reproduction of organisms that happen to have that particular trait. So if you were to do that for certain aspects, like shown in this picture, what you can get is turning a mustard plant into broccoli or into cauliflower or into Brussels sprouts. So we could actually reproduce it over and over and over again until eventually we get all of these options. The ideas behind evolution or natural selection kind of have their background in a guy by the name of Jean-Baptiste de Lamarck, who is shown on the screen. And his ideas were a little bit off, but still, he had a lot of insight. And what he dealt with was how an individual organism would adapt, meaning you wanted to be taller, so you got taller, and then what you could do is pass on your tallness to the next generation. Granted, what you do has nothing necessarily to do with what you get to pass on. So if you got really skinny, you don't get to pass on skinniness to the next generation. But what he got right was the fact that you could inherit traits. So your traits get passed on to the next generation. And that idea was taken over and championed by Alfred Wallace, who's on the left, and Charles Darwin, who's on the right. And both of them argued that actually you do get to pass on traits, but it's not because you chose those traits. It's just some traits turn out to be better traits for any given situation than others are. And they created this idea that we call natural selection. Wallace actually published first. Darwin just wrote a better book, so he's famous for it. And there turned out to be 5 different aspects to their ideas of natural selection. So we call them postulates. So there's 5 statements of truth. And from those 5 statements of truth, what you get is natural selection. Here turns out to be that list. So we know that there are too many offspring to potentially survive because we don't have enough resources. We know that not all those offspring are the same. So some of them are going to have faster metabolism. They'll grow faster. They'll grow slower. There'll be different colors. There'll be things different about them. And we know that those traits can be passed on from one generation to the next. But the thing is, we know that not all of those offspring are going to make it. There's going to be some type of struggle for existence. They're not all going to survive. The ones who reproduce clearly have the traits that let them make it out. So those traits are the ones that get passed on. Those that don't get the opportunity to reproduce because they didn't fulfill whatever challenges they had to go through, those ones didn't pass on their traits and they get lost. And what you get is a selection of what traits get to reproduce and what traits don't get to reproduce. This is dictated by the environment, and what we get is nature doing the picking. So it's a nature selecting or a natural selection. When we look at traits, what we notice is there's a giant span in terms of our options, where we can have some type of trait or any type of trait where there's going to be a whole bunch in one spot and you won't have as much in the extremes. The traits that let you survive are what we call fitness traits. So one's fitness actually has to do with whether or not the person's able to survive. So survival of the fittest has nothing to do with your muscular strength or what your mile time is. Fittest makes reference to, do you have the traits that will let you reproduce successfully and have your offspring reproduce successfully? That is fitness. And how do you know which traits are there or what your options are? One of those options or one of those mechanisms is called a mutation. And for the sake of not being super technical as to what mutations are, mutations for our purposes are changes in what your traits are. Meaning, we're not adding new traits, we're not necessarily getting rid of new traits, we're just changing what your specific trait is for any given characteristic. Meaning, are you tall or are you short? That would be your trait. The characteristic is your height. But it's, well, which version are you? Are you tall, short, somewhere in between? Are you super tall? Are you super short? What do you have? Are your bones really long? Are they somewhere in the middle? Are they kind of skinny? Are they kind of fat? Those would be things brought about through mutation. And what that turns out to affect is not you, it will affect the next generation, which is kind of the big deal. When we look at natural selection, or mutations for that matter, what we look at is the next generation. So natural selection turns out to follow 3 patterns. Those patterns are either we can get rid of the extremes and we become more uniform. We call that being stabilized. We can get rid of one of the extremes, and what we'll end up doing is pushing our curve to the right or to the left. So we're moving in a direction. We call that directional selection. Or we can sit there and say the average, the most common option, is actually a bad option now, and we'll split apart. Well, how does that work? It's the environment. If the environment changes, the conditions necessary to stay alive suddenly change on you, and the result is one of these 3 options is going to happen. If the environment never changes, none of this will occur because there's no reason to adjust. But if the environment is changing, meaning the living things and the non-living things, adaptations need to occur. An adaptation is what happens to your species over time, to your population over time. It's not about you, it's about the next generation. One of the things that we need to have in order for natural selection to really do its thing is we need to have options. So if you have a bullseye and all the organisms are somewhat the same, so they're all clustered together, that's good until the environment says, no, we don't want all these options over here on the left, we want options on the right. And if you don't have any options on the right, the result is you go extinct. But if a population has options all over the place, including some on the right, and the environment says we now will allow things with options on the right side of this target, those are the ones that actually are now fit. We have options over there, the species or the population gets to continue. Or if we're talking bigger, or we're looking at biodiversity, all of existence, all of living things get to survive on Earth because they're things that can survive those whatever that event is.